We're basically going to be drilling down from conversations yesterday at the plenary session, where we had an opportunity to hear some of the ministers tell us about the progress they've made in their carbon market activation plans, and to look at, what ACME has been able to do, in particular with helping governments to establish their carbon market activation plans.
Thank you very much, Madam. My name is Samuel Jinapor. I'm the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources of Ghana. And for our purposes, I'm the Minister responsible for lands and forestry. Senior statesman of Africa, our Vice President Sibanjo, Excellencies, distinguished guests. First of all, we're happy to be here. And I want to begin by associating with the sentiment you expressed, that the experts may guide us. I mean, I have my experts from my ministry behind me. But I share these thoughts as a policymaker, as a minister, and hopefully out of it, we will be able to fashion out a way forward. And Ghana is done quite a bit when it comes to carbon market. Fortunately, I have my senior colleague here, the Minister for Environment, who has the oversight responsibility for climate action in Ghana. But there are three fundamental points I want to put on the table. The first one is, in my view, the question of regulation, and regulation particularly at the national level. And so, I mean, as Minister responsible for lands and forestry, I get approaches on a daily basis about carbon trading, carbon market. And as it is today in many countries in Africa, we still do not have the requisite regulation framework, legislative and policy framework to be able to tap into this market. And which is why I think this organization, ACMI, may be very useful in giving experts support to various African countries to be able to develop robust policy and legislative framework, particularly as they relate to regulation, to enable us get the full benefit of carbon markets. The second one, I should say, is a matter of fairness and equity. And I will submit and do so forcefully that in this embryonic stage, the carbon market concept must have elements of fairness and equity. And by that, I'm talking about pricing. And what kind of pricing are we putting in place even as we speak today? And what is the relationship? And how do we relate the carbon markets to even the current international trade architecture? And how unfair it is to African countries? And how are we modeling carbon markets in a manner that African countries will participate in a way which is fair and equitable? Particularly when you consider the peculiarity of the African situation, our contribution to greenhouse gas emission, the historical antecedents of this climate issue, the Industrial Revolution, and so on and so forth. So I'm saying that fairness and equity will be very useful, and I will be very happy to hear from some of the experts how we model this carbon market in a manner that will give a level playing field and fairness to African countries. Thirdly and finally, I will say, is how do we dovetail carbon market into our national budgetary financing architecture? I mean, yesterday I was with the president of my country and the Minister of State for Finance, and I were having a discussion. I was saying to him that shouldn't we have a carbon financing division, for example, at the Ministry of Finance? So to what extent are we modeling our developmental paradigms in a manner that will mainstream carbon market, carbon funding into national budgets, into financing arrangements of various African nations? But finally is to also say, that we need a lot of money to prosecute climate action in Africa. And for me, as the minister from Ghana, who is responsible for lands and forestry, who has a plethora of challenges in my sector, which requires nature-based climate action, the fundamental question I believe a body like this will have to answer is, how do we unlock these carbon markets and have access to the money? Yes, it is useful for the workshops, it's useful for the discourse and all of that, but at the end of the day, how do we tap into the money in a practical way? How do we unlock carbon markets to be able to tap into the money? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that. Just 2 points on your commentary. One, you're getting at this differential price between the price per ton in the EU and the price per ton in Africa and other parts of the world. And that's something that really irks me personally, and I agree it's something we need to contend with when you're selling for 30 or 40 a ton in the EU and 10 or 15 here. It's just a reiteration of the kind of discrimination and inequity that we see more broadly. The other thing I want to note, though,